Welcome to Trauma Tea and Tangents, the podcast for those of you who feel like you've never fully been seen, for those whose experiences seem to be chronically invalidated, and for those who have been told they are too much and not enough all at the same time. I'm Hannah Guy, a trauma therapist and the owner of Revive Therapy Services based out of Philadelphia. And this podcast is all about the messy, complicated, and very real parts of being human. Mental health, relationships, trauma, healing, and honestly, just basic life shit. You name it, and we will probably talk about it here. Just a little disclaimer for you. This is not therapy. Nobody's going to make you do a body scan or talk about your triggers. Unless you really want to, then go off, queen. And with all of that being said, let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Trauma Tea and Tangents. I am here with the lovely Kelsey Wood. She's a marriage and family therapist, and she is here to talk to you today about hyperindependence in relationships. Hi, Kelsey. Welcome on.
Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah. So I know we have talked about hyperindependence, and I think there's this subcategory of how hyperindependence impacts relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. In a huge way.
Yeah. Specifically, we're talking about romantic relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your experience of how you have seen either yourself or your clients that you work with and how this hyperindependence comes up within romantic relationships.
Oh gosh, it's probably one of the biggest things that people come to me for is this romantic struggle with relationships. I've seen it in myself and my younger self where it was the refusal to accept a ride to your car. Like I remember one time I was out with someone, out with a man, and they offered to give me a ride to my car. It was late at night, dark, and I parked farther away, and it wasn't a great part of, the city or whatever. And my immediate response, viscerally so, I remember immediately being like, nope, I'm good, because I shouldn't, again, air quotes on should, I shouldn't need help from a man. Why can't I walk to my car by myself? Of course I can do it. I can do all these other things. And at the very basis, it's okay, but it's a really crappy area and it's nighttime. Just take the damn ride, And if it's interesting because in a situation for me, if that had been one of my really good girlfriends or something, I would have been yep, driving my car, no problem. So in the romantic sense, we often struggle with this idea, again, of being vulnerable and letting people in and letting them see a side to us that doesn't look fully in control, fully maybe just that we can do all of these things. We think independence is our absolute sword that we will die on.
Yes.
And it often is. So that's something that comes up for a lot of people, is just this idea of they can't be vulnerable, they can't let people in, or they also pick and choose maybe partners who don't live up to their expectations and what they really want a partner to.
Can you say more about that? The latter part?
So a lot of hyper-independent women not always, tend to want these really masculine oriented, really great men who do all the things and all that. That's their our fantasy vision of this is what we want, right? A lot of hyper-independent women, again, in a heterosexual relationship, but of course it can be whatever gender you are dating or want to be with, is we want a partner who's going to outman us, right? Or out lead us is maybe another way of saying it. So that's what we want. The problem is finding that person requires you to be led and requires you to be softer and receive and more in your feminine, as we've kind of talked about, previously. So the problem is if you don't show up in that way where you have space for someone to step into that role, you will. And a lot of the women I work with just automatically step into that role with zero understanding. So they're planning all the dates, they're setting everything up. They're the ones who are jumping the gun of well, hey, I found this place, da 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 da. And the guy is I didn't even have a chance, but that sounds great. Cool. And then it creates this passive type of style of partner that is the opposite of what every single woman is telling me they want. The exact opposite. And the problem is maybe that's innate within that person. We don't know, of course.
Yeah.
But this is a pattern that we're actually enabling and we're not doing anything different about. So that's
Yeah.
when I name that, and then it sounds icky and they don't like it because it is.
Yeah. What do you think the fantasy is about having someone who can outman you?
I think there's a lot of things. One, there's like of course, the like Disney, societal rom-com fantasy book, right? All of those types of things that come into us of like, this is the male role, this is the female role. So
Yeah.
there's that really, I think can come up for everyone too. But for a lot of people, it's this idea of most of my hyper independent women, and I felt this myself, are so
Mhm.
fucking tired.
Yeah.
They are exhausted.
Yes.
So if they have to do one more thing, and
Yes.
if they have to feel like they're the ones driving the ship, they're the ones doing all of it, they're out. They're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
And so having that like very, you know, leader driven, again, masculine oriented man by definition,
Yeah.
right? Which again looks really different. And I also acknowledge like the masculine orientation. That also means that they save and show up space for the emotions,
Yep.
the mental health side, all of that stuff. Like that's a huge piece of this, but we want them to do it. Like a
Yeah.
lot of the women I'm working with, they're like, I don't want to do anymore. Like
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. So I'd rather not date than have to go do more work.
Yeah.
Because why?
Yes. Yes. I also think the type of person you're talking about, if a man did show up in the space that they're in and outman them, that would be not great. Like, I'm thinking
Yeah.
about when I was more in that headspace, if someone did outman me or take that leadership role more than I was, my body would have reacted like, this is unsafe.
Mhm.
And I'm
Yeah,
getting mad. I'm like, who are you to tell me what to do?
right. Well, and that's where that vulnerability comes in and that openness, right? Of recognizing that there's space for them to do that. So it's kind of like I'll joke with people and my clients around like I need a woman who does it all to meet like a mister. I know you can, but sit down, I want to do it for you. So there's the acknowledgement of like you can do all this, but I want to do it for you.
Yes.
And if we're in a state, which a lot of women, when they come to me, are in, of really not being healed or aware of any of those types of things, then they can't accept, they can't receive that.
Right.
Right. And so it doesn't feel safe because they feel out of control. And control is the biggest thing for hyper independent women is that they know exactly how things are going to play out. They know exactly what's going to happen because they're in control over it. And we're asking you to relinquish that a little bit if you want that type of partner.
Yeah. Do you think you see kind of a mix of people, or is it pretty like even of people are like, yeah, no, I'm not letting go of that control?
Yes and no. I
Okay.
think it's really about trying to help support people figure out where, right?
Okay.
We all want control in relationships. We all want control in our life because, again, it does give us that illusion of safety. So it's more about how can we recognize what are the hills, again, we want to die on? What are the things that we can relieve some control over? So are you comfortable, like just as an example, I worked with actually this week with a client of like on some earlier on dates, like I'm talking dates like 1 through 5, like
Yeah.
early days. We're going to let that person plan the date, but you get to acknowledge that you're going to take yourself to and from, and here's the area I live in. Right.
Yeah.
So you're going to plan it. Right. And that's something that most people say that they want, but we're going to support you in saying something that feels safe to me is just that I like to drive myself to and from the first few dates
Yeah.
and teaching them how to communicate that in a way that isn't often a hyper independent woman can be a little harsh at times and a little like cutting. And so it's the softness of learning how to communicate the like, hey, this is just a thing for me. I'm so excited to see you, but I'll meet you there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Which, I mean, was that really hard for your client to sift through?
It's yeah, I mean, it takes some time because it's also like we're asking people, and I felt this like we're asking people to also practice like that patience and that anxiety that comes up
Yeah.
around like, in those again, a lot of people are on dating apps. So it's like messaging back and forth. It's early day dating of, if a person asks you out, like, hey, I'd like to go out, like, when are you free? Right. Very benign statement. It's not okay, well, let me go send my entire itinerary, right? Like they go into like go business lady mode.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, it's like take a breath. Let's practice like being in that receiving space of, hey, I'm free on Wednesday after 6. I'm on the south side of town.
Yeah. Yeah. What's coming up for me is the ability to have like sit in discomfort,
Hmm.
the stress tolerance skills. This is going to be really uncomfortable. relinquishing
Hmm.
control. And,
Yeah.
it's also you're trusting someone else to show up and follow through. And sometimes they don't. Actually, I would say a lot of
A
times
lot
they
of times. A lot of times they
so
don't. Yeah.
it's giving up control with necessarily a partner is 100% gonna, like, come through. It's like, I don't know if this person is gonna come through or not, but I'm
Right.
letting the opportunity for them to come through happen, and it's building that sense of inner self-trust that I'm going to be okay whether or not they show up or they don't show up.
Hmm.
But I'm
Yes.
going to put myself in a vulnerable position to receive because it is safe to do so, and I deserve to receive.
Hmm. Yeah. I had this conversation with two people this week around the idea of like a lot of people will say, I don't want to do that because, like, again, what if it's the wrong person? Because often when we're dating, technically speaking, if you're basing it off of, again, I don't necessarily agree, but like the
Yeah.
standard prescription of like you're going to end up with one person, then technically every other person you date is wrong,
Yes.
right? By definition. So you're going to have a skewed percentage. And for hyper independent women, they often will be like, see, they let me down again. I picked the wrong person, or they didn't show up, or they ghosted me. Everyone lets me down. And we're looking for those reinforcers of how our defenses show up
So,
when it's not about that. It is the self-trust you named. And it's really coming back to the idea of we have to put ourselves at the table to date if we want to date. So we have to know that the only way to know that that person's not the right person is to go on a date with them. It's the only way to know.
yes.
Or maybe it doesn't even happen, right? Because of whatever reason. So it's not necessarily like it's not being let down and being rejected and being vulnerable. It's your
Yeah.
reaction to it and learning how to manage, again, the duality around I can be vulnerable and let down at the same time. That doesn't mean I never am going to be vulnerable again.
Right. And being vulnerable and being let down doesn't mean that you're completely out of control now and everything's fucked.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
You
Yeah,
can be disappointed, right? But
totally.
it's like, okay, like this is a part of dating. Like you're gonna be disappointed, and it's learning how to sit in disappointment. But yeah, also the courage, and it takes courage. It takes
It takes
courage.
so much courage. And that's why I always go back to like how vulnerability is such a strength. So when I have someone who does do something, right, whether it's even myself, a friend of mine, whomever, and they do something vulnerable, right? Like they maybe give a piece of themselves to them, they give them information, they go on dates, they
Yep.
do something out of their comfort zone, and something happens, right? It's like, okay, but you tried. Like, again, the fact that you even tried and you did that, and maybe it didn't work out exactly how you did, and the inner narrative that first comes up is like, see, this is why I don't do that. This is why I would never go out with this person, or this is why I don't tell people these things. But that's us reinforcing again the defenses versus, wow, how amazing and strong of you to be vulnerable and show up in that way for yourself.
Right.
Because you would have never known that person would have reacted or let you down if you hadn't have done
Exactly. I think it's about the reframe.
that.
And I
Hmm.
think our negative cognitions we have about ourselves, we look for things to reinforce
Yes.
those beliefs, but you can also 100% take those reinforcements and twist them into a more adaptive and like healthier way of, yeah, if
Right.
I wasn't vulnerable and if I didn't like let them lead in this aspect of dating, I wouldn't have seen this part of them.
Hmm.
Yeah. Let me
Right.
down, and that's really disappointing, and now I'm not wasting 5 months of my
Yeah.
time, emotions, energy learning this. I get to learn it on, like, the 1st or 2nd date.
Yeah. And even for the people where it is 3, 4, 5 months in, right? And then they get let down, or maybe like say they go and take them and meet their parents, or something, and then they end up breaking up. I'll often be told, right, well, this is why I don't tell anyone I'm dating anyone. This is why I don't tell everyone I have a boyfriend. This is why I don't bring anyone home to my parents because it's just going to end. And the answer to that is that isn't true. Right. Like that's us looking for something to reaffirm our belief system and checking in with yourself. Like if you have a narrative around that that's always going to happen,
Yeah.
that might always happen, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to really check into this idea of like what we think and what we speak out loud often can come true, or we look for the things to make it true.
Yes.
And so recognizing our enablement of, you know what? Yes, I took this person home to meet my parents, or I told all my friends that I had a boyfriend. They met him for a drink once and then it didn't work out. And how brave am I to do that?
Yeah.
How great is it that I'm trying to find someone,
Right.
right? Like that's what everyone supposedly wants. And I'm actually doing something to try to achieve that. That
Mhm.
sounds pretty great to me and sounds pretty darn strong.
Yeah. Do you find that people who struggle with hyper independence, they tend to cling on to a set of like rules with dating?
Yes. 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 Very
uh
much so.
Tell me more.
I think for a lot of well, one, right now, there are like so many dumb, for lack of a better word, rules around dating that people see on the internet, right? Like this dating coach said this, and this dating guru said that, and this, and you're supposed to wait, 3 hours to respond, or don't do this, or da da da, right? All these things.
Right.
Or like if they don't offer dinner on a first date, just a coffee, don't do that. That means they're low value. And it's like, who the fuck came up with any of these, right? So there's a lot of rules being thrown at women and men, thrown at all people who are trying to date. Hyper independent women create another set of rules for themselves, and they often pick and choose the ones that reinforce again their behavioral patterns
Yeah.
to make them feel safe, right? So it's really simple or not simple, but it's something that comes up often for like a hyper independent woman will tell me like, well, I wanted to go to dinner and like they picked Chili's, and like I'm never going to go to a chain restaurant. And I'm like, are you here on this date as a food critic? Are you here on a date with another person?
Yeah.
Because they're already looking for something to be wrong.
Yeah.
So recognizing the different rules around like where will they go, right? How many times did this person need to confirm? Do they need to confirm at all, right? Are we going to try and show up? Are we going to pen pal with someone? Are we not, right? Like if they communicate too much, if they communicate too little, a lot of people build up rules that are actually just, again, they're reinforcing those negative belief systems that ultimately lead us to being alone.
Yeah. And there goes like the ability to have that flexibility of really getting to know someone for who they are,
Yeah.
and that curiosity of learning about them. You're going into it being like, let me, like almost with a rubric.
Hmm. Totally keeping score, right?
Keeping score. Yeah.
And for a lot of the hard part too is, within the realm of hyper independent women, a lot of the women I work with are very successful.
Yes.
And we know, like, there is data that supports this, that most really successful women, their dating pool is massively smaller than say, when you're younger or less successful.
Yes.
That's just something that there's a lot of data that supports that, is that a lot of women are going to, again, date in their own age range, et cetera, but also date up. And there's data that supports that, men will date, again, down in terms of maybe like level of like where they're at in their business, those types of things, not down as like a person. They're
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
But,
no.
and there's also though, there's a lot of really, really successful men and women who want to date each other because they can relate. The problem though is we're now in the 1 to 5% category of options. Most people are like mid, right?
Yeah.
Most of us are pretty mid. And so if you're looking for the 1%ers, because that's all who you will, you've decided that you will engage in or whatever, then we have to be aware of, then you're going to have 1% of the opportunities. And
Yeah.
again, that's not to say that women should settle or should not do that.
Right.
But then it's more just around, okay, so when that 1%er does show up or you find them or whatever, are you showing up in the way that you want to really, again, be as authentic as you can and show up in a way that could possibly lead to something, versus are you still in an unhealed state and we're reinforcing this idea that no one wants us?
Yeah. Yeah. I've been very guilty of the like, it has to be this, and if it's not this, and it's not meant to be, or like
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
looking
Definitely.
for red flags, or making things that are just neutral, or you just don't know. Like you need to be more curious about it and just turning into,
Yeah.
nope, not you.
And
Nope. Next.
I think giving people a chance, like hyper independent women are quick to cut. And this is in romantic relationships, friendships, like any type of relationship or thing, like they're quick to be like, I'm good. Because part of a hyper independent woman's makeup is that they feel like they're fine on their own,
Yeah.
right? They're gonna be fine on their own. So they don't need you, right? If you don't show up in the way that they want or that they've decided is how you should or whatever it might be, you're gone. And the problem is we're then on an island, right? If
Yes.
you keep burning every single bridge, you're literally alone on an island. So I encourage people who are dating, and if there is hyper independence, like unless there's something unsafe, creepy, very gleaning, like give it a couple dates, right? Like when you meet someone for the first time, it is rare that you're going to have that rom-com chemistry and spark.
Yeah.
And that might also be like maybe some attachment or some other stuff happening if it is that case.
Yeah.
So giving people a chance to show up as they are, because you also would want that too.
Do you think this mindset I see within dating culture of, well, there's always someone better out there,
Hmm.
which I don't think that's inherently wrong. I know I have stayed in relationships because I'm like, well, this is as good as it gets.
Yeah.
And the fact that I was able to change the mindset to like, no, there's people out there that can meet my needs. Like that's not, your needs aren't too much, right? And it hits a point where you're looking for like a robot who's molded to fit you and all of your needs and not a human being who sometimes has good days, sometimes has bad days, who has strengths, who has weaknesses. Just like throwing them in the trash because you're like, well, there's someone better.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. There's someone better, I think again, I think dating apps can be very helpful and beneficial, but it's one avenue for people to try to find someone, right? Like it's one of many ways. But it does kind of give us this idea, like it reinforces that there are endless options because you can just like swipe, swipe, swipe constantly, right? Delete your profile, re-upload it. Like you can just do that constantly, but it also reinforces then the scarcity mindset, right? So those two things are happening, opposing things at the same time. The scarcity mindset of like, well, this guy's like halfway decent, I better hold on to him. And it's like, okay, but like, honey, you deserve way more than halfway decent.
Yeah.
Everyone does. Like man, woman, whatever, it doesn't matter. So I do think there's part of that
Yeah.
that comes up for a lot of people in the dating
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. Ugh, it's so messy.
Mhm.
So messy. But again, I think it's coming back to being rooted in who you are as a human being and building up that sense of inner self trust of like, no matter what happens, I know I'm going to be okay. But
Mhm.
I'm going to put myself out there. And what that means is being vulnerable in this moment. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be vulnerable to the extent where you're like ripping your heart open for them, but being like, okay, I'm gonna let them lead here
Mhm. Yeah.
and see what
And
happens.
definitely like the inner self-trust is huge, but it's the choice to be vulnerable, right? Because a lot of
Yeah.
hyper independent women, they'll be like, I know I'm gonna be fine. I know I'm gonna be okay on my own. I know I'm gonna be okay. But then when you ask them really, they're like, no, I'm not. I'm not actually okay. So it's getting to that point of really that authenticity around, hey, this situation can suck and I really wish it would have worked out. And I do know at my core, I am okay, but I'm not going to push away more people. I
Right.
can be in connection, I can be in interdependence with people and still be okay.
Right. Exactly.
Mhm.
Kelsey, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
I love having these types of conversations. Dating is always like a topic too
Oh,
that I
yeah.
think a lot of people are interested in, and it can be overwhelming and frustrating. And I think for people who relate to being independent, hopefully they've gleaned something here
Mhm.
that can encourage them to be maybe even a little bit more vulnerable.
Yeah, just a little bit more open, just crack the door.
Yeah. And like you said, it's a choice.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
a choice. Anything you want people to know?
I think just again, with hyper independence, again, it's coming back to like vulnerability as a strength. Also, if you are showing up, like you don't have to put on any type of performance, you just get to be. And when you can show up and just be, literally just be, and when you actually feel that and you allow yourself that gift, that's what's addicting for people and for women to realize. That's where that true happiness and relaxation is. Your system can chill the fuck out is
Yeah.
if you can get to a point where you can just show up and be,
Yeah.
everything feels easier in life then.
I love that. If you guys want to work with Kelsey, I'm going to put her information in the description below. She does therapy and coaching. And I think that is all for today. If any of you guys have any thoughts on what we talked about today or any questions, you can always feel free to hit me up. My information is below too. And that is that. And I will catch you all next time. Thanks for hanging out with me on Trauma Tea and Tangents. If something here made you laugh, cry, or feel a little bit more seen, then my job here is done. Remember, this isn't therapy, but if you are curious about the real thing, you can check out my practice Revive Therapy Services. And if you are wanting more tangents, tea, and truth bombs, make sure to follow, subscribe, or share this with someone who just gets it. Until next time, take care of your nervous system, drink some water, and please stop trying to diagnose your ex.